So I thought it would be a good idea to do a tutorial on Procreate, but I'm just going to show you the tools that I most commonly use in my artwork so that when we're doing the drawing tutorials, you have a little bit of a better idea of how to navigate Procreate. Because if you've never used the program before, it can be a little bit daunting. So let's get started. In the beginning of my tutorials, you'll notice that I'll say we should start with the screen size canvas on Procreate. So the way that I do that is you open up Procreate, there's a plus sign in this right top corner, and then at the top it should say screen size, and you'll just tap on screen size. And there you go, screen size canvas. Now to size up and down, as you can see, I'm pinching the screen. You can also rotate the canvas like this as well. So now we'll get into some of the buttons that I use. So the first tool that we most commonly use is the paintbrush. If you tap on the paintbrush, it'll open up a paintbrush library. The brushes that I most commonly use in my tutorials can be found under inking, studio pen down here, or airbrushing, medium brush up here. These categories up here, you'll notice I have them and you probably don't. That's because I created these groups of brushes for different pieces of artwork so that I didn't have to go through all of these different categories to find the brushes again. And the way that you can create your own groups of brushes is you just slide down on this category side here, press the plus sign, and then as you can see, you can name it. And then you can go down to any one of these categories here, find a brush, drag it, and drop it. And then when you go to that group of brushes, it's there. The next tool you most commonly use is the eraser tool. And basically, this does exactly the same as the brush does, only it erases instead of draws. So if you wanted to erase with a soft edge, you could do that. So to give an example, if I were to take my paintbrush and we'll just draw a blob here, and I took my eraser and I selected soft brush, and let's say I just wanted to erase just a soft edge, it'll use that brush to create a soft edge. Similarly, if I wanted to erase using, let's try some kind of texture here, decimals. If I try to erase with decimals, it'll erase with that texture. The next most commonly used tool will be layers. So think of layers as a stacked piece of paper. Whichever layer you want to see the most needs to be on top. And that's exactly how the layers work. And you can also play with the opacity, meaning that you can make some of the layers transparent so you can see underneath them to other layers. But whatever layer is on top is the layer you're going to see the most of. So to give an example of that, I'm going to create another layer on top of this one. I'm going to select a different color and I'm going to draw on top, and as you can see, it draws on top of the green. Now let's say I wanted to see through the red to the green. On the red layer, I'll just tap the in, and then you'll see the slider here, opacity max. Just slide it down and then it'll determine how much of the green you can see. In order to take a layer and move it down, you just hold your pen above it until it pops a little bit, and then you slide it down. In order to delete a layer, we slide it over to the left and we can touch delete. In order to duplicate a layer, we slide it to the left and we hit duplicate. So another thing within layers that we commonly use is the clipping mask, and I'll just take a moment to explain that. So to explain the clipping mask, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a heart. So now that I have this heart, I'm going to create another layer on top. This is an empty layer. You create another layer by pressing this plus button. So to show you that again, you just tap on layers, press this plus button, and then you have an empty layer on top of the heart. So basically what a clipping mask does is it shows this empty layer guidelines as to where I can draw. So to give an example, if I clipped this top layer to this heart, and the way we do that is we tap this open square here, and then we go down to clipping mask, tap clipping mask, and you should see an arrow pop up on the side going down towards the layer that this layer is being clipped to. It's always going to be clipped to the layer right underneath. And so basically what that does is if I were to select another color here and make sure I'm on that clipping mask layer, it will only draw within the layer that is clipped to. So as you can see, I'm drawing outside of this heart, and with a normal layer, this would show up. But since I've clipped this layer to the heart, it will only show up where the heart is. So what I most commonly use this clipping mask for is for faces. So let's just say I'm going to do the outline of a face here. And then I'm going to color it in like so. If I wanted to do some kind of shading, what I'll do is I'll press that plus sign. I'll clip that layer to that bottom layer so that everything that I color within this layer is going to stay within that face. And I'll take a darker color here. I'll switch to a medium blend brush. As you can see, it kind of feathers off, and that makes it easier to shade. If I were to try to shade with a studio pen, it would look like this. And although there are some people who like to shade with more of kind of like a textured, scratchy shade, I like to shade so that it looks smooth, like as realistic and natural skin as possible. So I'll take a medium blend brush and I'll make sure that I'm on that clipping mask. And then as I shade, no matter how far to the edge I get, it's not gonna go outside of the face. So it makes it way easier to shade something. Now another tool that we use commonly is this color tool. I'm usually on this disc right here, but there are a lot of different ways that you can view the color down here. What I like to do is I stay here on the disc because I like to be able to select the color on my own right here. This is basically the history of colors. So if I was to use this color, now when I go back, it'll show up there. If I use a green, when I go back, it'll show up. So if there's colors that you've used that you'd like to get back to, this is a good way of finding those colors again, if it's something that you've used recently in your drawing. Now the way this color wheel works is this slider will slide to the specific color within the rainbow that you'd like to use. And then this inner slider is going to give you all of the different hues and tones within that specific color that you could possibly get. So when I use my skin tones, I'm usually over here between the orange and the red, because as you can see on this inward slider, our tone, the undertone of our skin is usually orange or red. So you can get all of the different skin tones within this. The further this way you go, the more grayed out the skin tone. The further in, the more saturated. So to give you an example, if I wanted a skin tone that was more grayed out, there's a grayed out skin tone. And then if I were to take that same slider and slide it inward, then I get that same skin tone, but it's saturated. I usually go somewhere between the gray and the saturated, right here along the middle, and you get a pretty good skin tone. Another tool that we'll commonly use is the wand tool. So that's this wand up here with the little sparkle dust. So to demonstrate what this does is if I take a color and I put it here on the canvas, if I go over here to the wand tool, ensuring that I'm on the layer that I would like to alter, if I go over here to this wand tool, we most commonly will use hue, saturation, and brightness. It pulls up these little sliders down here, and the brightness will either turn that super dark all the way to black, or it can go all the way up to white. So any of the tones in between black and white that are within that purple tone, you can darken or lighten that color. Within saturation, you can gray out the purple, or you can make it super candy purple. And then with the hue, you can actually change the color. So if I wanted to make this blue or green or red, I could do that. Now the only thing is that with this hue, it only works on colors. So if I were to go over here and create a grayish tone here, and then go back to the magic wand, hue, saturation, and brightness, if I move this slider, it's only going to change the portion that is an actual color. This is grayscale, and this is a color. If I go over here to saturation, it's still not going to change the saturation because saturation has to do with how much the color pops versus not. And since this doesn't have any color because it's grayscale, it's not going to change that. However, if I go over here to brightness, I can change the brightness or the dark because brightness applies to anything. Anything can be brightened or darkened. It doesn't just have to be on the color spectrum. So the last tool I'm going to show you is this bar over here. So this first slider up here at the top is going to allow you to select how big your brush is. As you'll remember on some of my videos, we usually stick with size 4 brush. So if I draw, this is the thickness of my brush. If I increase the size of my brush, it's just simply going to be thicker. So if I want to use my color dropper, I just tap this here. And it's basically telling me that the color that I currently have selected is this bluish purple, which you can also see up here. Now if I take this and I drag it over here to the red, it's showing me that it's going to change from this bluish purple to the red color, which it does here. And now I can color in that red. If I use the color dropper tool again, drag it over here to the gray, now I can color in that gray. And the last couple of tools are this bottom slider, which is basically going to show you the opacity of your brush. So say I have it at 100% opacity, that means that I'm coloring on solid. Now if I change the opacity, it's basically, as you can see, it's making it more transparent. So when I draw, it's going to be transparent. Or if I draw over this, you can also see the transparency. Whereas if I were to bring it back up to full opacity, you can't see through it. And then this is the back button. It's your best friend. Now, as long as you are within this canvas, the edits will be saved so that you can go back. But if you exit the canvas and then come back into it, they're no longer logged. So just make sure you keep that in mind. So I hope this Procreate tutorial was really helpful. Those are the tools that I'll be using in all of my Draw With Me tutorials. So you can always reference this video if ever I'm going too fast or I skip over the instructions of something and you're like, wait, what did you just do? Which button did you just click? Just refer back to this video and information should be in here. So I would highly recommend Procreate. It costs $12.99. It's a one-time payment and you'll always have it downloaded and you can update it as many times as you'd like. And yeah, I think it's just an awesome tool, especially in an age where most of the things that we share are going to be digital. Procreate just kind of streamlines the process. As always, if you enjoyed this video and if it was helpful to you, please like and subscribe and share it with others. I'd love to hear your comments and your suggestions on more videos to come.